So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a connection between the universe and the human mind, because the human mind is like, it's capable of experiencing the universe, and it can experience sort of any different part of the universe that we can observe. And with technology, we're rapidly expanding like the realm of what it is that we can observe, where we're sort of restricted in that we can only observe things on our scale, but we're building telescopes and we're building microscopes, and we can observe things that are very large and things that are very small. And there's a lot of beauty and complexity in that. And so what I'm trying to do is create like a connection between the universe and the human mind, and increase the bandwidth, so make it so that people are experiencing something as close to what they would actually experience if they could be there. And the way that I'm doing that is I'm using art and science. And science is a way of exploring reality, exploring the cosmos. And so we use science, and we go out, we make observations, and we constantly refine to try and find the most accurate picture. And with art, we're communicating a subjective experience. And so we can bring those two things together and use what we like what we gather with science, all this scientific data, all these images, and we can present it artistically as, and through that, it like creates this complete connection, and people can experience the universe. And when they do, I think that that's a really spiritual experience, at least it is for me, because the universe is so incredibly vast. And we talk about numbers like a million. You could never imagine a million. And then in our galaxy, there's 100 billion stars and like 100 billion planets. And that's our galaxy. And there's 100 billion galaxies in the universe, right? Or, I can talk about, trillions, and like my body is made of about 100 trillion cells. And it's like these numbers are beyond our ability to comprehend. We just, we didn't evolve the ability to do that. But what we can do is we can see what that looks like, and we can experience through technology just the vastness of the universe. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make it so that people experience as much of the universe as possible, and I think that will change how they experience reality every day, so that people are more aware of who they are and their place in the universe. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. What else? So the way that I'm doing that is I use different tools at the university. So I use a scanning electron microscope, which can magnify the very small, up to about 30 or 40,000 times. So you go from like the meter scale, which is about how big we are. You divide that in 1,000, you have like a millimeter. And then you take that same ratio. In a millimeter, there's 1,000 micrometers. And in a micrometer, there's 1,000 nanometers. And so with this microscope, you can go down and look at things that are nanometer size. And there's just as much complexity and diversity in biology and in things that are that size as there is up here. It's like entire worlds to explore and landscapes down there. And so that's one tool that I use, and that's sort of that's the observational aspect. And then I use computers to put information together. So I can take a bunch of pictures in like a time lapse, or I can take images with the microscope and rotate them each frame. And so I can make videos or animations, give it like a 3D effect. I can colorize the images to make them look more like what you would actually see if it was something on our scale, because there's no color in the microscope images. And then I print them. There's a 44-inch wide printer at the Fine Arts Building, so I'll take all this information and I'll make it into a physical copy. And I think about, people are experiencing this stuff through computers and the internet, but like a screen is, it's 1280 pixels wide, right? And the bandwidth of your experiencing is limited by the number of pixels on the screen. But with the printer, you can have all of the pixels there, so you can have, it can be 10,000 pixels wide or something. Like, it's finer than the eye can resolve, and so it's transcending the limits that we're still working with our technology, and creating something that is, I guess, it reaches the ability of our nervous system. Like, it matches what we're built to experience. Instead of being like a low resolution copy, it's like closer and closer to the real thing. So I've connected these tools, and I'm trying to get other people to use them. So I'm creating like a student group called Art of Science, and we're going to essentially do this. This is going to be our project, and we're going to, do scientific observation and do data processing, and we're going to do public outreach. Hopefully, going to elementary schools, or putting on projection displays, so that we can bring this out to as many people as possible. Because it's lacking in our society, this spiritual connection with the universe, and it's unity, right? Like, we're it and it's us, and we don't feel that because we don't experience it. And so that's, I guess, like the focal point of everything that I'm trying to do, is to create that experience so that people can just connect to everything in the everyday. Things in the universe. So I guess we're starting out really tiny. So these small spheres here are individual atoms. I guess smallest we could start out right here. This is blown up. This is a molecule of DNA. The yellow ones are phosphorus, the red ones are oxygen, white is hydrogen, gray is carbon, blue is nitrogen. And so this is, I think, about 10 nanometers across, maybe a little bit less. And so this is like the basis of all life. Molecules like this have been replicating for about 4 billion years on this planet. So when life got started, things like this were just sort of forming in chemical soup and, whatever, who knows, in like tiny little bubbles in ice or at hydrothermal vents under the ocean, and they made shapes like this. So this is 3 DNA double helices put together in a fork. And what that does is it creates a groove that allows DNA to copy itself. So once this shape formed, these things just started replicating and like growing exponentially. And then we moved up, like things evolved more and more rapidly, and we went from DNA and RNA, which are like nucleotide polymers, which are like long chains, to proteins, which are, they're also like chains, but they're made of different atoms and in different structures. And that's what these things are here. This is protein, this is protein, this is RNA and DNA, but with different proteins on it. So like this thing is, it copies DNA and it replicates it. And then this is a ribosome. So like DNA gets copied to RNA, which is like a messenger molecule, and the RNA gets taken to a ribosome, where the ribosome converts the information in the RNA into a protein, which you can see here is coming out. So you get a linear strand of DNA, makes a linear strand of RNA, goes to a ribosome. This is like a factory. And there's something like, I don't know, 100,000 trillion of these things in your body right now. Oh, of course. Nope. And they're all moving extremely rapidly. Like things are also like happening in the like nanosecond time scale. So like things are happening really quickly. And they make proteins like this. This is a protein that synthesizes fatty acids from smaller molecules. So like the fats in the membranes of your cells get made by a molecule like this. So yeah, that's like the teeny tiny molecular soup of life. Let's go up a scale. Here, I want to get at this poster. Oh, this is all good. You can grab that one under there. These are images of cells. So these are like slices. So like this part here is the same as this part here. This is the nucleus. So this is filled with DNA, wrapped up in all sorts of really complex shapes and interacting with itself all the time. Like this is like the brain of the cell. It is thinking, it is experiencing, like it's receiving messages and changing the behavior of everything that it lives in, which is this part around it. And that's like the cytoplasm of the cell, and it's got, it's mostly membranes. These green membranes are, it's called endoplasmic reticulum, which is fun to say. And all these little dots, these little black dots on here are individual ribosomes. So you could zoom in on one of these, and it would look like one of those.
This one?
Yeah, the one on the bottom. So yeah, like every one of these is one of those. And so you can imagine, like this is a slice. But if this was three-dimensional, it would sort of fit in the space between us. and that would be cool. So like, you know, it's a three-dimensional, all this stuff is happening all the time. So the next image I'm going to show you is, see along here, no, hold on, this thing right here is like a slice from the nucleus all the way out to the bloodstream. And this is an immune cell that's making antibodies to fight an infection. So yeah, if we could just roll this up. Hold on to that. You hold that end. Okay, and I'm going to unroll it and just sort of come in and like hold it up, I guess, as much as it needs to be held up.
Oh my god.
Wow, we'll all see
The shape's beautiful.
Oh, it's taped. So this is the, like we've zoomed in again, so this is the interior of the cell. And this is the nucleus. These pink strands are the DNA. And here they're being copied and made into RNA.
So these have all been artificially colored, right?
Yeah, there's no color down here because these things are smaller than the wavelengths of light. This is actually an illustration of something that we can't see yet with microscopes, but we should be able to see soon. And so
if we can see it, well, there's no lights. Or
yeah.
So
how do we know?
How do we know? Yeah.
So science, we do studies about, like, we've localized the ribosome here. We found that this protein interacts with this protein, and it's just like all of these research, like a research paper, you know, they'll spend, you know, 4 years working on like that protein, and they'll learn a little bit about it. And you know, there's hundreds of thousands of scientists working on this stuff. And the person who did this illustration, his name's David Goodsell, and he's a molecular biologist. And he knows, you know, he reads all these papers, and so he's able to create in his mind a model of what the cell is actually like.
Wow.
Yeah, which is an impressive feat. And yes, he's added color to each of these things to sort of separate them by their function.
Sure.
So starting in here is like, this is DNA, and it's being copied and it's making RNA, which is like the messenger. And the RNA is being like transformed and spliced and like cut into just the right sequence. And it's getting carried out through this, which is a nuclear pore. It's like a hole in the nucleus for things to come in and out. And then it's getting carried to the ribosomes, which are these blue shapes right here. And they're taking that information and they're making proteins inside these membranes, which are in red, and the proteins are in pink. The other stuff, like all this green stuff, is called the cytoskeleton, and so it's the way that the cell like moves and controls it, like its size and shape. And so this process goes on, and these proteins, they become folded and like turned into like their functional shape, and then they get carried, they get packaged into vesicles, and this thing is kind of like a postal center or something. Like it tags all the proteins and it gives them like messages of where they need to go. And then they get like packaged into these little bubbles called vesicles by this crazy thing called the clathrin complex. And those will bud off the surface of this Golgi complex and get carried to the bloodstream and to, you know, by like in these little vesicles. They'll get carried on this thing, which is called a microtubule. By this thing, which is called myosin, and it's essentially, it's like two little feet. It's like these little motors that goes, and it's just like, you know, it's sort of like, you know, people pulling blocks for the pyramids or something, and it will pull the vesicle and to the like the edge of the cell where it'll like merge, burst out, and release all of its cargo. So you can imagine, like, this is a tiny slice. This thing as a whole cell would take up the volume of, you know, this, like a building like that building or that building, you know, it would be about 50 meters across or something. Like, it would be much, much bigger than this, and it would be this big three-dimensional thing, and all of these components would be interacting with each other and moving very rapidly. And that's like one cell. And there's 100 trillion cells in your body, and they're all doing this in every single moment. So it's like, you are molecular nanotechnology to like the extreme of that's just been evolving for billions and billions of years and becoming more and more complex. Images that I've taken myself. which is really cool because most of the other images come from the work of other scientists, and they're collecting data and collecting information. But yeah, to get these images, I went down to the ocean and I got something called a plankton net, which is just like it's like a little filter which you pull it through the ocean and all of the little organisms get sort of sucked into a bottle at the end. And took that bottle and I took out one single organism, and it was about 2 millimeters long. It's called an amphipod. It's a crustacean. And I dried it out and I put it in the electron microscope, and I looked for things on it, and I found this. So this green thing is like the body of this amphipod. The pink things are bacteria that were living on its surface.
You may want some little light here.
Okay. Good thinking. Yeah, much better. And this blue object is called a diatom, and it's a type of algae. So it's similar to a plant cell. So it has chloroplasts, it does photosynthesis, it uses light to turn carbon dioxide into sugar, and it makes oxygen. A fifth of the oxygen that we're breathing right now gets made by these, and they are ridiculously abundant. They're like the base of Earth's food chain. Like they turn the sun's energy into things that we eat, especially in the ocean. And so you can see here, there's a lot of detail of all of these objects, and so you can, to get the scale here, like the whole thing is about 50 micrometers across. So, and then these bacteria are about 1 micrometer, and these little tubes here on the surface of the diatom are about 100 nanometers in diameter, a little bit less, 60 nanometers on the inside. And the tubes are basically so that they can exchange salts, nutrients, chemical messengers in its environment. And the
How many micrometers are there in a millimeter?
1,000.
How many nanometers are there in a millimeter?
That would be 1 million. So yeah, it's pretty deep. Just like the amount of stuff that's going on in here. Yeah, so these things are all in really symmetrical patterns, and there's a level of complexity and organization to this being. And I have absolutely no idea how that takes place. And I would like to find out, because it's extremely precise, and it's doing something that we can't do with any of our technology, which is to make things this small and to make them, it's with some process that it must be so perfect in the way that, it drills a hole or it forms. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, this whole thing is made out of glass. So it takes silica atoms from the ocean and fixes them together to make this shell out of glass. And on the edge, you can kind of see it here, there's all these little holes, like perforations in the edge below the tubes. And the shape and size of those holes, this is new science. We found out actually focuses wavelengths of light, specific ones, so photosynthesis becomes more efficient. So it's actually working like a lens. Yeah, so like the shape of stuff is it's making the diatom more efficient, making it like do photosynthesis faster. And yeah, it's a total mystery.
It looks like a lens too. Eh?
Yeah, it does. And it does kind of look like an eye, which is pretty cool. And what else did I bring? Oh yeah.
Whoa.
So a couple different things in here. This is the edge of the diatom, so you can see all the little holes. It's like this beautiful mosaic pattern and like little arches.
So much strength.
And networks in here. Yeah, it must be really strong too. This is a sponge, so like a sponge in the ocean, which is just, it's like the simplest form of animal. And it's covered in these little spikes, which are also made of glass. They're called spicules, and they're sort of like its skeleton. And the cells live in here, and they like, yeah, this is how animals got started. And every animal on Earth evolved from something like this. Yeah, crazy, right? This is a mushroom. So I was looking at like the underside of like when you see I think a conch is what it's called. It like grows out of the side of a tree.
It's polypore.
Yeah, polypore. This is what, if you look at the holes in it, this is what they are. And you zoom in, and it's just made of these little filaments, which are incredibly strong. Like the material it's made out of is just like it's really like a solid thing. This is about 10 micrometers across, and these are all like the little perforations.
I need those keys.
Beautiful shapes, like beautiful geometry and architecture.
Take me
and,
into
like,
the next room.
it's
Sort of all
crazy,
my problems.
and it's all in a drop of water. So this is a zoomed-in region of this one right here, and I think these ones actually make like a circle when they're complete. They've got all sorts of different shapes. These are diatoms as well, living inside the sponge, like this photo we saw earlier. No idea what these things are. Total mystery.
That looks like scared.
Plants and plots.
Yeah, I know. You find some of the same patterns recurring on different scales.
And this looks like a nest to a trapdoor spider.
This is the eye of a bee, and you
Oh
can kind
my
of see the
God, it's
hexagons,
amazing. That's
and there's
what I
little bits of
thought.
pollen stuck in there.
Oh wow. They like the pollen.
Yeah, they do.
I
Yeah,
have
so
a
that's
question.
Yes, of
How do you
course.
take these photographs? Like what type of...
So these are cities photographed from the International Space Station, and I've inverted the colors so that the black is white and what is originally yellow is now blue. This is Beijing, this is Tianjin, and this is Binhai. And so this is China. This is like the center of China. And this is like, all of this area here is all ports. Just this part is lit up, but all of this is, there's like ships coming here and like mostly taking goods away, but also bringing goods. And then there's, all of this traffic that comes along here. There's a bunch of roads that aren't lit between Beijing and Tianjin. And if you look at these, and you look at the way neurons grow, or the way that cells behave, it's exactly the same shapes, because they're doing the same things. You look inside the cell like we did, and it's, it's microtubules and vesicles and all these like factory, like ribosomes and doing things. And then you look inside of a city and you've got cars and trucks and people and appliances and buildings, and they're all specialized and they're all helping each other exist. So this is like, cities are organisms that live on Earth, and they grow and cooperate and like interact with each other. And so this is just like unifying the biology of what we like. We look inside ourselves and we see these cells, like these neurons, and outside of ourselves, the cities that we live in, we're living inside neurons on like the next scale up of they're like cooperating with each other, and we're making them happen. Our individual actions, without being aware of the greater whole, are making the cities alive and making them grow. And yeah, like this is just like a small photograph. There's other ones that show like, these regions. They have the entire world mapped in that now, and it's just like, it looks like slime mold or something. Like it's just this organic thing growing over the surface of the Earth, and it just unifies. Like it's the same pattern repeating itself. It's this fractal shape where you have a bacterium and it's got all these specialized machines and they're interacting with each other, and you have a cell and it's a bunch of bacteria like mitochondria and the nucleus and the Golgi, and they're all helping each other.
25 cents.
They're all like specialized. And then
25
you go up a scale and you have all the cells in a body, they're all specialized and they're helping each other. You go up a scale, you have all the organs and they're specialized, they're helping each other too. All the people in a society, even different countries and cities specialize and cooperate with each other. And so it's just, life is just this one shape that keeps on creating the conditions for it to exist. And that's what we're in, that's what we are, is this amazing, like, regenerative fractal process. So yeah, that's it. That's the story that I came here to tell you.